I want to talk today about Simplified Christmas, or to put it another way, I call it "'Twas the Plight Before Christmas." A few years ago, Christmas was kind of crazy for me with the schedule and everything. And I'm not a poet, but I wrote a little bit of poetry. Here's my version. "'Twas the plight before Christmas. I scurried around, wondering if Christmas would bury me this round. So dash away quickly, some shopping to do. The shoppers were frantic, and the smiles were few. Now Jason, now Judy, now Andrea too, clean up your rooms or no Christmas for you. And this Christmas schedule is folly. My diet is nil. I'm beginning to wonder, quite frankly, if I'm over the hill." So, I mean, there's so many things about Christmas that I absolutely love, but how do we get it so complicated, you know? And we keep adding more things in, and we got to do this and everything. Now, my favorite part of Christmas are the lights and the music, all right? I just love those two things. I love adoring the Lord and realizing He's the light of the world and all the Christmas lights and everything. What do you think is my least favorite part of Christmas? Shopping? Yeah, boy, that's right up there, right next to it. So that's pretty close. My least favorite part of Christmas is wrapping presents. Okay. I'm horrible at it, you know. And, you take a box and you get the wrapping paper and you spread it all out, and I'm sure there's enough to cover, and then I wrap it up there and use Scotch tape on it, and then I look at it and there's a big section. I didn't plan it right, and it didn't cover. So then I'm cutting off a piece of wrapping paper and I'm trying to tape that on there. It's a nightmare for me. At our house, when our girls would pick up one of the presents, they could always tell. And they say, "Oh, it looks like Dad wrapped this present." So that's my least favorite part of Christmas. Now, do you think the wise men wrapped their gifts? Say no. Okay, most of you say no. Okay. I think the wise men didn't wrap their gifts for two reasons. Number one, they were wise. Number two, they were men. I think men missed out on the gene that comes with wrapping presents. Sometimes things can go crazy. I read about a lady in New York City, and she took her son to see Santa Claus. And took her son up there to put him on Santa's lap, and suddenly she recognized that Santa was her ex-husband who wasn't paying his alimony. So she headed out, she got a court injunction, and in 3 hours she came back and slapped a court order on him to pay the back alimony. And I don't think Santa was saying, "Ho, ho, ho." Now, I want to talk about how God uses tangled plans and what's His purpose. Because I find most Christmases, or just life in general, plans get tangled. And what we'd hoped for, we had an idealism, this is going to work out and we're going to celebrate together, and then something happens and it doesn't work out. Well, let's go back to the first Christmas, and we're going to see in Matthew 1:18 and 19. This is how Jesus the Messiah was born. His mother Mary was engaged to be married to Joseph. But before the marriage took place, while she was still a virgin, she became pregnant through the power of the Holy Spirit. Joseph, to whom she was engaged, was a righteous man and did not want to disgrace her publicly, so he decided to break the engagement quietly. If you go back and you read the whole account, you realize that from what their expectations would be, there's a whole lot of things that just didn't go according to the plan that they would have liked to have had. I mean, Zachariah and Elizabeth, they didn't plan on having a baby that late in their lives. They didn't plan on Zachariah not being able to talk. And Joseph and Mary, they're probably just teenagers. And they just had dreams of their marriage and family and growing up and having children and everything. But it didn't work that way. And all of a sudden, Joseph finds out that Mary is pregnant. Now, this is stuff that would go into a scandal, right? And so that's the first thing that wasn't working out. The logical conclusion would be Mary became pregnant from some other man. So the only thought he could think of is divorce seemed like the only option. In those days, once you were engaged, you were considered married. So engagement had a lot more permanence than what we see today. So actually, to break an engagement, you would have to divorce the person. So this isn't what they had to plan. Then they had to make this trip from Bethlehem, from Nazareth down to Bethlehem. Now, it's just hard for me to grapple with how difficult a trip that would have been. It would have been over mountainous areas. And do you know how long it would take? It's really about 90 miles. 90 miles to go from Nazareth to Bethlehem. And if you were walking at a good pace, it'd take you over 4 days. You know, they say 20 miles a day is about tops of being able to hike that far. If they were going 2.5 miles an hour, it'd take 4 to 5 days. Now, you say, wasn't Mary on a donkey? Where do we find that? You find it in your greeting cards, but it's not in the Bible. Did you know that? There's no indication that Mary was on a donkey. So here she is, pregnant and ready to deliver pretty soon. And if we understand right, if there's no donkey in the story, now there could be, but it's just not mentioned. But can you imagine being pregnant? I mean, she's out probably like this, you know, and trying to walk 90 miles to get to Bethlehem. That doesn't sound like a fun idea to me. So they make this trip, they get to Bethlehem, and then there's no lodging that is available. Now, a lot of our Bible translations use the word inn, all right? It kind of gives you a picture like there's a row of hotels that all have their no vacancy sign out. That's not the case. Actually, the word that is used there is the word lodging, and it would imply a guest room in a private house or maybe an open public shelter for travelers. So it's not like the idea of there's no room in the hotel. All right? And so we know they don't have room there, and so the baby Jesus, his first bed was a manger, a feeding trough for animals. So, you know, after the baby is born, did you realize what an arduous journey they had ahead? Now, if you trace this all through, After the birth, the shepherds come. And by the way, shepherds were not considered highly in their culture. Shepherds were lowly, rough, unclean. Parts of culture considered them to be dangerous individuals. And there were some who had high regard for the shepherds, but the society in general really did not have that outlook. Now, the shepherds come, and then on the 8th day, they again travel to Jerusalem. So a round trip to Jerusalem and then back to Bethlehem is 12 miles round trip. Now they had to make that trip twice. So on the 8th day, they went for the circumcision of Jesus. Then on the 40th day, they made that trip again and to Jerusalem, and then finally back to Nazareth, back to Bethlehem. So I can't imagine that. Then they get the word from the Lord that Herod has vicious plans in mind. So now they take the baby Jesus and they've got to go all the way to Egypt. Now we don't know for sure how far because we don't know how far they went into Egypt. But the very shortest that distance could be would be 40 miles. So another arduous journey that they take, and to be able to flee into Egypt. And then once they get the word that it's safe to go back, they go from Egypt to Nazareth, another 140 miles. Wow, exhausting trip. Proverbs 3:6 tells us this: listen for God's voice in everything you do. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. So as they're taking all of these according to their thinking, these would be detours from what they had hoped and what they had planned. And then they make the flight. I can't imagine traveling all the way to Egypt with a little one and all the difficulties that would be. When our oldest daughter was about 6 months old, we decided to make a family trip to South Dakota. And so we, being pretty broke, very broke college kids, we decided to take one of the night flights, all right? I think we were leaving out of LAX about 11 o'clock at night, and you get cheaper rates that way. So we've got Julie with us, and she is not happy with the idea of traveling at night. So she starts crying, and she's loud, and we try to quiet her down. Meanwhile, the whole plane is looking at us like, can't you quiet that kid down? It was a very, very difficult thing. So, when we face discomfort or inconvenience and immediately think either we have misread God's will or that God has made a mistake. Not so. God did not soften Joseph's bumpy road and in the process of bringing a Savior into the world. Now, here's what I find, is that many times there are plans that we have, that we make, and they get disrupted and we get upset. Realize God may be directing you in another direction for a very good reason. So, Christmas plans that don't quite work out, God has a purpose and has a plan in that. A week ago, we kind of had our week all planned out, getting ready for Christmas and doing other things. And And early in the morning on Wednesday, we find out Joanne has a splitting headache and her blood pressure is spiked way up. She's on the phone talking with her daughter, and her speech becomes slurred, and her daughter knows the symptoms and the signs of a stroke, and so we were very concerned. So the daughter immediately called an ambulance and took Joanne into Kaiser. And we're really thankful the results were negative as to having a stroke. Every test that they ran indicated that that did not happen. But I was thinking, Lord, I had this week, I had things to do, I had a plan ahead of me, and now the whole plan has got disrupted. Well, out of those things, God always has something good that he's doing. Now, secondly, God uses tangled plans to show us a better way. Matthew 1:20. As he considered this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream. Joseph, son of David, the angel said, "Do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child within her was conceived by the Holy Spirit." So there's a better way. God has a better outcome. Though the plans that they had weren't what they would choose, God has a better plan, and he has a better way for it. A number of years ago, Joanne and I were dating, and I went to Wheaton, Illinois for a missions gathering of missions leaders across the country. And Joanne also went to Illinois to visit a friend, but we were a long ways apart. And our romance was definitely blossoming. And so when, after the conference was over, an enormous blizzard came into Chicago. I was at O'Hare Airport, and for 3 days, the entire airport was closed, okay? I'm a broke college kid. I couldn't afford to go get an inn or a place to stay. So for 3 days, I'm wandering around the airport, sleeping on a bench, and bored crazy. And that was, I'm going, what's this about? This wasn't in my Christmas plans. Finally, we found out that the best way to get out of Chicago O'Hare was to take the bus. So I thought, well, I'll take the bus to my hometown, which is in South Dakota. Meanwhile, Joanne's having the same problem of trying to be able to get out. And so she finds out she could take a bus, and we said, why don't we go to my hometown. She'd never met my parents. And so the tangled plans that we have turned into the most wonderful Christmas we ever had. Here we are in my hometown, we're meeting my family, and on Christmas Eve, I asked her, would you marry me? And she said, yes. I'll think about it. No. That's a bold statement by you, buddy. She said, yes. All right. Tangled plans turned into something really wonderful. So God's plan for my life is always bigger than my plan for myself because God has a bigger perspective. So when we're going down a path and it seems like the path is blocked or our dreams don't come to pass or something doesn't work out or the family can't come or we didn't get the gifts that we wanted and all those things, step back and say, God is bigger and God has a bigger plan for my life, and because he has a bigger perspective. Now I want to give you just 3 thoughts here as we look at God uses tangled plans to teach us to simplify and trust him. Number 1, identify what distracts from the simplicity and purity of devotion to Christ. Boy, does Christmas do that. We're so distracted with everything. Oh, the shopping and all the parties and the fun and the in other words, and those could all be good things, but we're deceived when our minds are led astray from the simplicity and the purity of devotion to Christ. That's what matters. And I think even among Christians, this often happens, and we're so busy with all the preparation that we don't take the time to set aside and worship him. Did you realize the average person spends $975 on Christmas? $975. Further, a fourth of those people, of the 975, haven't paid for last Christmas. Talk about a dead end. So it's so deceptive. We've got to go, we've got to spend all this money and all these gifts and all these things. We spend a whole lot more money than we should, and we miss out. I'll tell you what we did one Christmas. We decided as a family that we would have a missions project that we would all go in on. So rather than spending a lot on multiple gifts for each other, we just had one gift, and that's it, to each other. But we're going to put our funds that we would normally spend on Christmas, and we invited others to participate with that. And we were able to purchase a 4x4 vehicle for our missionary friend that we had in Africa. What a joy that brought to be able to do something for somebody that didn't have the means, and he desperately needed that. So we have to be careful. We don't let our minds be led astray from the simplicity and the purity of devotion to Christ. Did you know there was no Christmas celebration among the early Christians? Really? That's true. The first record of a Christmas celebration among Christians was in 336 AD, once Constantine became a believer and legalized Christianity. Now, let me give a further thought with that. So there was no Christian Christmas celebration. So furthermore, the Europeans and the Romans had decided in the bleak of winter that they needed something exciting, so they planned this great festive occasion with dancing and drinking and eating and everything like that. So that's what was in place, was secular. Then in 300 AD, Christians saw that and they said, you know what? Let's turn the focus into Jesus and celebrate his birth. So that's when the actual Christmas began. Simplify. One Christmas as a pastor, I went to 24 Christmas events in 20 days. 20 days, 24 parties, events. Every group in the church, of course, wanted the pastor there. And what do you do at all those events? You eat, and you eat, and you eat, and it's all sweets and goodies and everything like that. It was unbelievable. And by the time Christmas came, I didn't feel good, and I probably looked like the gospel blimp because of all the parties that we had gone to. Secondly, choose to not have a mind-splitting headache over Christmas. Say, no, I'm not going there. I don't need to. I will enjoy the parts of Christmas that are wonderful, but I'm not going to have a mind-splitting headache. Think of the setting where Mary and Martha were there and Jesus came to visit. And the Lord answered to Martha and said, Martha, Martha, you're worried and upset about many things. Message Bible says you're fussing far too much and getting yourself worked up over nothing. The word that's used there for worried is a word that means to split the mind. So we get so frantic and we got so many things to do in our mind, we jump from one thing to another, and it's a mind splitting. Jesus said, don't get that way. Don't get worried. Don't have a mind-splitting headache over Christmas. The second word that he uses is that we get all upset about things. The word that's used for upset there, it's actually the source of the word for turbocharged. Now, that'd be fine if you want to turbocharge your car, but not the human body. We weren't meant to operate with that kind of stress. Thirdly, simplify by seeking the one thing that really matters. Jesus said this, only one thing is needed. What's that tells me? That means there's a whole lot of things that are optional. You don't have to do them. Simplify Christmas. Only one thing is needed. And what is it? He goes on to say, Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. Mary, by the way, she did serve in the kitchen. He uses the word more over there. So she was involved in the preparation, but at this point, she decided the most important thing was to be there at the feet of Jesus, learning from him. It goes on to say in the Message Bible, one thing only is essential. It's a main course and won't be taken away from her. The worship, adoration, and giving our love and our heart to Jesus during the Christmas, that's the only thing that is essential. Now, I'm not opposed to doing a lot of the other things. Just don't miss the essential part. In Psalm 27, David said, one thing I ask of the Lord, and that's what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. If we get so caught up in the busyness of the season, we miss out on what is most important. Be still and know that God is God. Sing the songs and worship him. Simplify Christmas. For me, one of the best things I could do, one is find a quiet place and just sit and meditate on Jesus. And express my love to him, my thanks to him for giving his life to be able to come, and thank him for his wonderful, incredible gift that he has brought. And while I'm doing that, I may break into a song, and sing a song of praise to him. That's what is essential. Everything else is optional, all right? Sing the incredible songs of Christmas. We've had many Muslims live with us through the years. And one of the guys, he's a really sharp guy, and we developed a really good friendship with him. And he agreed to go with us to church for a service. And he came out and he said, "Do you do that every Sunday? Sing?" I said, "Don't you have that in Islam?" He said, "Oh, no, we never sing." I said, "No, singing comes from a joyful heart that is overflowing." And he was just astounded by that. In fact, if you want to know further, the Quran makes no mention of music. And some of your Islamic scholars believe that music is even forbidden. Wow. Sing the songs of praise. Adore Jesus for who he is. Get involved in being able to do that. Let's bow in prayer. Lord, we quiet ourselves before you. We ask, Lord, that you'll simplify our minds and keep us from having distracted minds and adrenaline running that's not necessary. And Lord, all those things can cause that we lose our focus of what is most important at Christmas. So we give you our love and our adoration. Let's sing the chorus together. Oh, come, let us adore him. Come, let us adore him. Oh, come, let us adore him. Christ the Lord. That's what it's all about. It really is.